The question often arises, how much sleep do I need? Most of us know we need 8 hours sleep, but there's a lot of science that supports that. What's happening though is that on average, people are getting less than that. Even 100 years ago, people were getting 9 hours of sleep a night. And I find that really fascinating. What happens when our bodies are able to do what they naturally do? And we find is that we sleep quite a bit more. The NIH has said that there's this national sleep epidemic in the United States, and this is because 30% of results are in sleep deprivation, which is where they're reporting 6 or less hours of sleep a night on average. That's not so good. We're passing that on to our children. 30% of high school students are getting 8 hours of sleep, which means that 70% of high school students are getting less than 8 hours of sleep, and high school students actually need 9 to 10 hours of sleep. Yeah, 9 to 10 hours of sleep, and they're getting 70% are getting less than 8 hours of sleep. So we're setting them up as adults to be sleep deprived. Now, the problem with sleep deprivation, and the reason that the National Transportation Association in the United States is on this issue and calling it an epidemic, is because our rate of injury and accident skyrockets with sleep deprivation. The crazy thing about sleep deprivation, the more I researched this, the more I discovered that people don't realize when they have it, which is kind of crazy. So we don't realize that we're more accident prone. We don't realize we're not making quick decisions. We don't realize that our impulses are slowed. We don't realize that we've become a danger to ourselves and a danger to others. And that's what makes it so scary. We think we're totally fine. We think everything's a-okay. Often in Body Thrive and with the live coaching with me, what you've probably heard other members say is like, I didn't realize how tired I was. I didn't realize how much I'd broken my immune system down until it was too late. And this is part of I would say that the heartache and the problem of what happens when we override these natural circadian rhythms day after day, year after year, decade after decade, as we start to just break down our physiology. So what I want to explain in this video is, this is a bucket. This is my lovely bucket. And if we think of, there's different ways of thinking about what this bucket can do for us. So if this bucket is we'll say it's our energetic container, right, of our whole physiology. It's akin to the structure of our physiology. And it's also akin to our immune integrity. These things are hard. In an Eastern holistic perspective, they're easy to talk about, and from a Western, more nuts and bolts physiological perspective, it gets hard to nail it down because you have multiple systems, how the grand sum total of all your systems, how they run when things are in sync, when things are optimized, when there's efficiency. That's the potential of the bucket. That is what the bucket is representing. I know that can be a stretch. In Ayurveda, we have an easy word for it. It's only 4 letters. It's called Ojas. And it represents all this. It's our energetic container. It's our physiological structure that has a lot to do with immune integrity. Immune integrity in Ayurveda is when every cell knows the boss. It knows it's all part of the whole. All systems are working together. All systems are in sync, in rhythm. And what happens is we end up with an energy surplus. We end up with a love surplus. We end up with more, and this feeling of complete fullness, so full that we're able to like just kind of give things away. We're able to give away our love. We're able to actually give our energy to projects and to people that are really important to us. We're able to live in sync and alignment. And those are all side benefits and signs that we have strong ojas. We have strong immune integrity. So how does this relate to sleep, and how much sleep do I need? If we're not getting enough sleep, the things that we're putting into our bucket are all of our experiences. And a lot of our experiences, if we look at are we having too many experiences in the day without digesting the experiences? Because if we are, and we just keep putting in more experiences, we might put in even things like, say stimulants, like caffeine, alcohol, chocolate, sugar, right, all of those. Stimulants, etc. This whole category. We're constantly putting in a lot of things for the body to digest. when we're stretching the clock on both ends, right? If we have our little dosha clock here and we're going to bed at 12 and we're up at 6, right? And we're getting 6 hours of sleep. We know this is the pattern, right? Like equal to or less than 6 equals sleep deprivation. This is what the NIH, the National Institute of Health, says, okay? But this brings us to sleep deprivation, meaning our physiology is deprived of sleep. We're having too many experiences, right? Too much going on. Not enough blackout time, not enough deep rest time. What happens is our bucket, it develops these cracks and these holes. And energy starts to leak out. Just like, if you imagine this more as a crock or an urn, and now there's cracks developing in the clay, and the energy that you put in, right? We're also putting in energy here, we're putting in food. Often when people have this cycle, they're eating later in the day and they have more hunger. The physiology, it's kind of crazy. It produces this emotional hunger. It feels like real hunger. And the physiology gets totally out of whack. The person ends up eating too much, eating more than their body needs. And they're trying to put more energy in, but it's just creating energy leaks. And what happens is over time, we start to have a low energy state. Now, being so used to adding in more experiences, what we usually do at that point is add more stimulants, more caffeine, more experiences, more stress, more sugar, more quick fixes, right? And we're just trying to put more in because that used to work before. But what ends up is more and more ends up leaking out, and we develop gaping holes, and we start to feel worse and worse. And often at this point, we're starting to develop systems of immune disorders or autoimmune disorders where the body doesn't know, like, all cells working together as the one, right? Instead, we have multiple personality disorder happening on a cellular level where the body's attacking the body, right? And that's what happens when we have this much of a level of confusion bringing in too many experiences, bringing in too many stimulants, and not taking the time to align to the cycle where we change the bedtime more towards 9 p.m. and the waking time more towards 6 a.m. So we're actually getting 9 hours of sleep because we have some repair work to do. And sleep is the best medicine for repair work. So we've talked a little bit about autoimmune disease. So here we're talking about chronic fatigue, Crohn's, fibromyalgia, MS. I think there's about 60 to 70 diseases, so obviously we're not going to list them all. Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, etc. What provokes these is usually experiences that were super stressful, right? So we have a massive amount of stress. Sometimes that happens from deaths in the family and not taking time for mourning. Sometimes it happens from postpartum and not taking time to actually recover and realign in the new physiology, get crazy pants amounts of sleep, right? And allowing the time. And it's hard because our culture doesn't often support this. Sometimes it happens from stress at work that slowly built up over time and created a behavior that was like this and ended us up in sleep deprivation for decades, right? So depending whether it was a chronic or an acute incident that brought on the problem, what we can often notice here is that until we take the time to reset the rhythm, we don't get to have the experience of immune integrity. How long is it going to take to rebuild immune integrity? Depends on how many holes and how many cracks there are in the structure of your immune integrity. This is a subtle energy, ojas, and for those of you who are interested in Ayurveda, it's the subtle dosha of kapha. And you'll remember, kapha is the energy of nourishing and flourishing. Its elements are water and earth. I'm going to run out of space here, aren't I? It's really grounded. It's the subtle energy. I often think of it as a subtle gel of connectivity, right? Of the deep connectivity of consciousness that knows how to heal, that knows how to repair, that knows how to optimize. And that's the energy we want to tune into. It's easily accessed through early or later dinner and deep sleep. If you're not going to move the earlier or later dinner, you're not going to end not asleep as well. So if you have a heavier later dinner, it's going to be much harder to build this kind of energy. All right, that's a little overview. What I'd like you to ask yourself right now, this is your action step, is how much sleep do you need, right? That's your question, is how much sleep do you need in this next phase of your life? Whether you think of the next phase as a month or as a quarter, is how much sleep do you need? And based on that, right, what time is bed? What time is waking time? Right? And just start to see like, okay, this is me getting in reality with myself. That adds to your integrity. That builds over time. And soon you're the kind of person who can really do so much because you have a well of energy that's behind you. You're not coming from a deprived place with a leaky bucket. You have a reinforced bucket, and you're able to do great things in your life at 100% of your energy potential.